Hello, my name is April, and my thesis will evaluate the hacking technique for ospreys. All right, so I'm going to talk about osprey hacking and the challenges I faced when I was trying to evaluate this technique. And then because we're at UIS, I'm going to talk about what we're doing actually now with ospreys and hacking. Starting off with my introduction. Now, according to Temple, there are four general approaches to raptor reintroduction. The first is the cross-fostering of nestlings to wild adults. The second is translocation and release of wild raptors, captive release of adult raptors, and hacking of young raptors. And according to Temple, hacking is actually the best technique out of all these because it instills site fidelity. And when you think about reintroductions in general, that's the idea behind them. Because where you release your species, your animal, that's kind of where you want them to hang around, reproduce, and establish a population. But what exactly is hacking? Hacking is a translocation technique that has been commonly used for ospreys to restore populations to areas where they have been previously extirpated. Now, the first osprey hacking program was started in 1979 in Tennessee, and the protocols haven't really changed much since then. You basically translocate young ospreys about 4 to 6 weeks of age, and then you put them in these enclosures, and they're called hack boxes. And these enclosures have like an open front, and this starts to get, that site fidelity that I was talking about earlier. And then once they spend a little time in there and they grow up a little bit and the muscles have become developed enough to fledge and actually sustain flight, you release these birds. And as Temple had said, the idea is that these birds will actually return to the vicinity of the hack site and establish nests of their own, and then so you'll get a population that way. And now, hacking has been very successful for ospreys because of their life characteristics. The first is that when they're young, they're really docile. When they get older, it's another story. But when they're young, they're very adaptive to these hacking procedures. They also possess an innate fishing instinct, meaning that nobody has to teach these birds how to fish. It's kind of already in their hardware, and they'll learn how to on their own, which is great because I can't fly, so I can't really teach them. And then finally, and the most important factor, is that they're philopatric, and this means that they exhibit fidelity to nest sites and to natal sites. So when you think about ospreys, they're going to use the same nest year to year to year, and then their offspring are going to actually return to the vicinity of where their parents nested and establish nests of their own. And their offspring are going to establish nests of their own near their parents. And you're going to get a population that way because they kind of nest near each other. And studies have shown that males are more likely the ones to exhibit this kind of fidelity. Which brings me to the purpose of my study. So in the US, there are actually 20 states that have established hacking programs. And from this program, this has resulted in the release of over 1,800 osprey chicks. But the problem is that if you wanted to actually look up any one of these hacking programs in the US, what you'd find is not a whole lot of information because a lot of this literature is inaccessible. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do here in my thesis. I'm trying to elucidate some of this information that is in gray literature and bring it to surface so we can all learn about osprey hacking together. And now how I'm doing this is through an evaluation. I'm evaluating all the hacking programs in the US, and I'm identifying, well, what makes them successful. And because we're at UIS and we're talking about osprey hacking, I'm going to try to relate, some of the management recommendations that I found in this evaluation back to our own program here at UIS. All right, moving on into my materials and methods. All right, so first step in my evaluation, I wanted to find all the hacking programs, and I only wanted to look at peer-reviewed literature. Unfortunately, that ended really quickly because I found only 4 articles out there that included the words osprey and hacking in them. So I started looking at everything else I could find on the internet. So I started looking up, technical reports, surveys, newspaper articles. In some cases, I used blogs, anything that I could find. And basically what this did is that I was able to identify which states had hacking programs, but not much else in detail. And I certainly did not know what exactly were the results of each of these hacking programs. So that's when I said, well, let's go back to the source. Let's find out who exactly hacked in the United States and let's contact them. So from my internet search, I identified reintroduction practitioners that were directly involved in the osprey hacking, And then the rest that I couldn't find because, these programs started in the 1970s, so more than half of them were created before I was born. I used another technique called snowball sampling, and that's a recruitment technique that basically helps me identify these hard to reach kind of populations. I sent structured questionnaires to these reintroduction practitioners, asking them about their experience, and I basically used the information from these questionnaires to kind of fill in the gaps that I couldn't find on the internet and validate the results, some of my findings that I found also on the internet. And this is actually a qualitative research approach called triangulation, where you're using multiple sources to kind of validate the same type of information. What I found was, I was really pleasantly surprised is that most of these reintroduction practitioners were willing to, fill out a questionnaire and take the time to do that. 13 out of the 19 that I contacted, in fact. And then 3 other participants said, well, we don't really want to do a questionnaire, but here's a map, or here's a pamphlet, and that should help you, right? And it did, to an extent. Now, one of the first questions that I asked these reintroduction practitioners, well, what do you think makes your program successful? What are the factors? And they told me, well, the first and most important one is if you hack a lot of birds for a very long time, that's going to get you success. And I said, okay, cool. What else? They said also, if you hack more males than females, because as I said, males are more philopatric than females, that's also going to help. And then if you hack them in quality habitat, so these are birds that are really young, you want to give them the best chance of survival. So you want to hack them in a good area where they have all the resources they need to survive. And then finally, you want to add some money in there, because you need money to hit this whole ball rolling right off the bat. And now, basically, I took what they said and I said, okay, those are my factors of success, and then I compared that to saying, well, which factors are most influential in the field? So I looked at all the factors out there and compared that to all the states with hacking programs and their success rates. And basically, the only one that I kind of found a pattern to, and you have to keep in mind my sample size is small, is that if you hack more birds, more than 50 birds, and you have a hacking period that lasts longer than 5 years, you're more likely to see success than not. I then finally started to evaluate each one of these programs in terms of success at short-term scales and long-term scales. Now, in a nutshell, what kind of disappointed me was that in the very beginning, I guess what I'm trying to say is that osprey hacking is very descriptive. We are very excited when the program first starts. We have a lot of funding. We record everything that the birds do in the process. But as your hacking program gets older, as time goes on, well, so does the quality and quantity of your data. It kind of peters out toward the end to where you have inconclusive results for every hacking program out there in the US. So I started trying to evaluate these in a more concrete way. So I looked at what I call tier 1 of success. And basically this is a short-term scale of success in which I asked, well, has a hacked bird returned to the vicinity of the hack site and established a nest of its own? I was able to find this information for all of the programs out there in the US. At the longer tiers of success, say at tier 2 and 3, that's when things became a little more difficult for me. I then asked at tier 2, well, great, you have one nest by one bird. What else? Do you have any longer term goals for your hacking program? And they told me, no, we don't. We don't have a goal. More than half of the programs out there in the US do not have any kind of goal like, 20 nests or 30 nests. And that becomes a real issue, because then if you don't have a goal, you don't have a monitoring program or a longer term monitoring program that goes along with it. So of course they don't know how many birds are actually nesting. And this leads to problems with the third tier of success. I asked them, well, as of right now, do you have a self-sustaining population? And they said, yes, we do. And which could be true. Osprey populations in their state have increased. But is this due to hacking? They don't know, because they don't have a monitoring program. There's also no way that they can actually evaluate this or tell me or measure it in the field, because they don't have a standard for an analysis in measuring what is a sustainable population. But let's talk about Illinois and what we're doing to try to change some of this. So we started a UIS in conjunction with DNR, started a recovery project for ospreys in 2013. We're already addressing the 4 main factors that will contribute to success. So number 1, we're hacking a lot of birds, and we're planning to do this for many years. So if you're interested in this, you can follow I'm being replaced this year, so just keep that in mind. We also already have a goal, and our goal is to get an average of 25 nests over a 10-year period. So we have a goal, and therefore that means that we're going to have a great monitoring program, and I can tell you firsthand from personal experience, it's pretty intensive. Finally, as of last year, we also started to select more males than females because, as I said, males are more philopathic, and we're hoping for more success. And we're addressing the funding issue by having Dr. Ting, and that's all you need to know. And then finally, what we're doing is we're going to show up all the hacking programs in the US because we're going to do some kind of analysis. Most likely it's going to be a population viability analysis, where we're looking at, well, once we get more data, what is our current population of ospreys like now, and where is it going in the future? So it's going to help predict where osprey populations are going. And then finally, we're going to make our results more accessible to the public. So we're planning to do multiple publications over time. I would like to thank Dr. Ting for taking me in as her graduate student, all the participants who gave me any information in this research. Unfortunately, I can't identify them because of confidentiality. And U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for paying me to annoy them. And then finally, I'd like to thank the Ospreys in this project because without them, our world would be bleak. Questions? Thank you.
All right, 2 minutes. Question for April.
Yeah.
Do you think there's some kind of role that UIS can play in making some kind of database so that all this information can be available?
That's my job. I'm also doing, that's actually a really good point because that's something that we're completely missing in Illinois. We have an idea, we're saying ospreys are state endangered in Illinois, and we have a general idea of, we know what, maybe 2 nests right now in Illinois, but there are more nests than that, but nobody knows exactly where. Well, I'll get fishers coming up to me saying that, oh yeah, there's a nest over in that corner over there, and I'll look at it and it's actually an eagle nest. But there are more osprey nests than we think is out there, and that I am in the process of trying to get a database going once my thesis is done. All right, anything else?
It's not 10:30 yet. One more question?
Ended.
Okay, well, thank you, April.
Thank you.